Hello everybody, Adam here, and welcome to episode 0 of season 4 as we return to the Shadows of the Jedi. Before we get started with today's recap and morality episode, our competition is still ongoing. If you want to win a copy of the Force Awakens beginner box, kindly donated by Malcolm and Liz Hazel, you are still in with a chance. Simply go to our pinned tweet or post, like, share and retweet it, follow us on those social media forms, and you can be in with a chance, and the winner will be announced next week as we start season 4 properly. Our patrons also get a bonus chance, as well as access to an almighty number of random bits of nonsense you might enjoy, and it can all be yours for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/forcemajeurepod. Right, that's enough from me. Let's get going. You know how it starts. A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away. You're listening to Force Majeure, an actual play Star Wars podcast. My name is Adam and I'm your host, and today's episode will be brought to you not after a word from our sponsor, but after this, perhaps even more vitally important message.
Okay, we're going to take it down a bit to a slower, more subtle tune. This is how we learn a bit about morality, which I have struggled with in the past. Don't shoot people.
Doobie doobie doobie.
It's not nice to do.
Nice to do.
Don't shoot people.
Doobie doobie doobie.
Unless people shoot at you.
Ba-dum dum dum.
Don't shoot people.
Doobie doobie doobie.
Your gun's for self-defense. And shooting people who shoot at people and for looking cool to your friends.
But.
Shooting people isn't big and clever.
Clever.
Don't you know that you should never
Ever.
shoot a person unless that person's trying to shoot you.
Shoot you.
Or of course if they're threatening to shoot you.
Doobie doo.
Or you have a reason to think they might shoot you.
Doobie doo.
Or if you're really, really sure they're gonna shoot you. I hear that means it's okay.
Aye, it is.
But don't shoot people.
Doobie doobie doo.
'Cause it's not nice to do.
A doobie doo.
Don't shoot people.
Doobie doo.
Unless people shoot at you.
Bum bum.
Unless people shoot at you. Or you think that people will shoot at you.
You're listening to Force Majeure. This chronicle is Shadows of the Jedi. Hi, it's Ed Fortune. I'm back as your GM, and I couldn't run a tabletop role-playing game without some lovely players, so I have some lovely players.
Hi, I'm Ross. I'm playing Dr. Smex Karam Denalawa, whose emotional strength is his compassion, whose weakness is his obstinacy, and whose description is he's a Syrian consular healer.
My name is Adam, and I am playing Tychus Bar, a basilisk. Now, in the first chapter of Shadows of the Jedi, he was a sentinel artisan. However, since we recorded that, there's been the full range of splat books released, so Ed has very kindly let me change. So I am now a guardian armourer. My emotional strength is my bravery, and my emotional weakness is my recklessness.
Hi, I'm Mikey. I'm playing Dalen Kyrain, also known as K. He's a human. At the moment, he's upgraded to a Taru Striker, and his emotional strength is his compassion, but his emotional weakness is his hatred.
So this is a new season. This episode is going to be me recapping the story, a little bit of house admin for all of our Force using characters, and also a little bit of explanation as to what the characters have been up to since the last season and the season that's just about to begin. Before we get into anything else, let's just remind ourselves as to what happened in the last season. A very long time ago, in a far, far away part of the galaxy, the planet Cynabale was a legendary world, a shining beacon in the galaxy, the gateway to adventure and a land of technology and discovery. It fell into ruin, as these things do. Then, when the time was right, it was revived. The Empire, or the Public, or Collective, or whatever it was at the time, ruled, it collapsed, and Cynabale became lost. This happened many, many times. Today, Cynabale is seen as one of the last places you'd ever want to visit, with its dying sun, devastated hyperspace lane, shattered moons and trash-laden desert. Cynabale is a famous world, famous for one thing: ruin. On this world, 4 unlikely people found themselves flung into adventure. Tychus, a youthful basilisk engineer with a talent for chaos, and his best friend Roy, a battle droid unlike any seen in the galaxy. Both, in their way, products of a war they never really knew. The human K was, when we first met him, a wreck. A man who had dedicated his life to a singular noble and good cause, only to discover that his friends and masters were neither. The Doctor, Smex Karam, is a good man with good friends whose loyalty and sense of duty to the forgotten and the damned had taken him to a place that even he could not heal. But this is Cynabale. The planet has a way of happening to people. In the city of Red Yes lies a bar, the Bloody Kiss. Kay was trying to have a drink, and the barman, of Alan Fawn, was trying to serve him one. Everyone else was trying to have a good time. Alas, a swoop ganger called Garrett Tane had other ideas. The bar fight was epic and strange, and our 4 companions woke up in a jail cell. Enter Velo Kane, a chiss who sees all problems as solutions. His master, Raka the Hutt, had lost some precious cargo in the wastelands, as the freighter, the Razor's Heel, had crashed in the desert. Kane offered to free the party from their unjust imprisonment, as long as they partook in Bracca's scavenger hunt. A crystal statue was the object Bracca wanted, one that was seemingly holy to him. Betting a bag of stolen fire opals on themselves to win, the 4 unlikely heroes set out. They braved Cynabale's wasteland in a battered old swoop, watching out for the horrors that lurk there, whilst dealing with other gangers who had also been shanghaied into Bracca's little game. The weather of Cynabale is deadly to the unwary, so they took shelter at Vin's Fort, a settlement made from a long-lost dreadnought. Yet again, the companions found themselves in the bar. Yet again, Garrett Tane's infamy caused a bar fight, but this was much worse. Tane had gotten caught up in some Imperial experiment, one that Kay recognised all too well. It drove the local populace mad and fierce. In the melee, the good doctor found himself a secret power, one that healed the people but at a cost. The Force had opened itself to the Doctor, and his life would never be the same. Saving the villagers and fleeing into night, the companions braved the weather to make their way to the Razor's Heel. On the way, they had made a new friend of sorts, a Bovan called Secretary. They made it to the Heel and made another friend, an Imperial battle droid called K2T2, whom they saved. The freighter was still on fire, and it was here that Kay was touched by the Force, a vision of death and destruction. Forewarned and with much cunning, they made their way into the burning starship. The Force had opened itself to Kay, and his life would never be the same. Trials and tribulations they overcame, and yet again their character was tested. This time, they freed innocent creatures from their cells, though some of the newly acquired frizzy friends stayed with them as pets. Closing in on their prize, the crystal statue, the team began to understand the Imperial plot. A weapon, mystical in nature and capable of causing great suffering, was being taken to Cynabale for testing, smuggled alongside with the statue. In the base of the statue, they discovered 2 ancient Jedi artifacts. Tychus figured out the secret of one of them, calling upon the Force to open the artifact. The Force had opened itself to Tychus, and Tychus's life would never be the same again. With these acts came terrible visions of the future, of heroes lost and terrible space weapons putting the galaxy in chains. They found themselves in the presence of a mysterious guardian, one who spoke only in riddles, before the vision ended. The party made their escape, and also made enemies in the sense of an Imperial agent and his lackeys, only to flee to a ruined starship they scavenged from the cargo hold. It was a daring escape, and they returned to Bracca's palace victorious, and won the bet. The only thing that remained was for them never to tell Tychus's parents what they'd been up to. And that's sort of where we left off.
Where Tychus had definitely not told Tychus's parents 3 or 4 different, totally contradictory stories. I mean...
And hadn't brought his best friend along, who happens to be essentially a walking nanny cam.
Yeah. He's not very good at lying.
It's funny you should say that, Adam, because that neatly brings us to the question of morality. And that all 3 of us here are, in fact, characters who have to worry about morality. So let's start. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do two rounds of this. So basically up to episode 7, so just after you left Vin's fort, and then after Vin's fought.
Okay.
Okay.
So the first time round, I'm going to start with Dr. Smex.
Excellent.
The good doctor is very good. He's very well behaved. Shockingly so. But you did... Okay, so you weren't naughty. You were very good. There was one thing where essentially the dark side was fed to you and you nommed it.
Yes. And he discovered a whole new world of other people's lives.
And I don't think, and you might feel free to disagree, but I don't think you would have done things differently if you'd known the consequences.
No, probably not.
No, I think he's the sort of person who would happily walk into fire to help and heal the sick. Sort of almost saintly. It's disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure whether he would have done that straight away from the beginning, but he was looking for something to wake up in his life. So
I'm going to set your morality roll at 2, which is outrageously low.
Yes.
Feel free to tweet and write in or Discord us.
I've rolled a 4.
So,
That's...
Morality goes up by 2.
Hooray!
Which brings me to Mikey.
hello.
Kay.
Hello.
Kay was really reluctant to do anything at the start.
Mm-hmm.
And very much broken.
Yes, he wasn't good.
I think most of the darkness that you brought was stuff that you brought yourself.
Yeah. He's had a hard few years and he's very regretful of the roles he's had in the suffering of other people. And that's what broke him.
So at this point, I basically get to sort of use your background against you at the start,
Understandable.
which is, I think, is fair.
Yeah.
And your actions were reluctant.
Mm-hmm.
So Destiny was calling and you were trying to hit the snooze button as hard as you could,
Yes.
whilst, still playing the game and having fun.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to give you
Yes.
a morality roll of 5.
Okay. So I rolled a 5.
So you stay where you are.
Yes.
And on to Tychus.
Hello.
So Tychus has a good heart, I think.
Yes.
Tychus definitely was more reckless than brave.
Well, yeah, he was kind of leaning into his weakness a little. Yeah, I think that's fair.
And certainly at the start, you really wanted to do quite a lot of damage, especially to Garrett.
Yeah. Yeah, well, he's a horrible goon, and Tychus is young and a little bit silly, and he's impulsive is the main thing. He's very impulsive, and he's impulsive on a lawless planet, in a lawless city, in a lawless society, being run, his parents are both criminals, his clients are all criminals, his best friend is a bounty hunter. He may not have like Roy's problems with morality, but he's not really got a great role model.
Not a fantastic grasp.
No.
And the funny thing about abstract systems for judging moral values is that somehow being raised in a criminal background and being kind of reckless is very similar to taking part in a grand experiment to bring suffering to the galaxy.
Mm-hmm.
So your morality roll is also a 5.
Okay, that seems fair. I got a 2, so my morality goes down by 3.
Oh, dear.
So after the encounter in Vin's fort, there was I believe, a change in theme, he said slightly pretentiously, and also a change in mood to the story we were telling. And one of the things you first encountered, firstly, you had a prisoner.
Mm-hmm.
We were very nice to him.
You treated very well.
We didn't nick all of his stuff.
He was a bit miffed. You traded with him.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, he wasn't a member of the Shattered Oath. We've got no beef with the Thermal Wolves. They're all right.
And then you encountered a battle droid, which you could have quite easily have mullered, to use a colloquial phrase.
Yeah.
How colloquial are we being?
Practicing Orthodox constructionist over here, you know. Droid rights.
Exactly. So Tychus's morality swung in.
Yeah.
The Doctor's morality, which I believe is quite bright anyway, swung in. And you followed Imperial Protocol.
Yeah.
Did Kay, so...
Mm-hmm. Droids are just droids, but Tychus seems to care, so it was important to him, so it's important to me.
And then you went on to rescue some bunny rabbits.
Rescue... Well, okay, they would have died if we hadn't done anything.
I appreciate it's from another show, but having seen exactly what 3B's been doing on Hiding Away, I'm not convinced that they probably could have got out of there a lot easier and less hassle than us.
Yeah, but, I mean, we were going to blow up the ship. We couldn't really leave them on there.
No. They're so wuzzy, Ed.
They are
They're
very
so
wuzzy.
wuzzy.
Yeah, but we didn't know they were... We didn't, we didn't go back for anything.
I wouldn't worry too much about the ecosystem of Cynabale because, its ecosystem is, mostly teeth. To be honest, it'll be fine. It's been broken so many times that it kind of works. So, morality. The Doctor has a morality roll of 1.
This has got to be glowed with holy light and everything, isn't it? I rolled a 5.
So your morality goes up by another 4.
It's sickening, isn't it?
It is quite sickening.
It's an interesting contrast to Agatha.
Yes.
Hit it! Don't think about the consequences. Hit it with the other members of the team.
Just no 14s around this table.
Well, we don't know.
14.
We'll see what we get.
Sorry, that number's a trigger word.
I think between the two, the half the session and to the end of the session, the biggest sea change was for Kate.
Mm-hmm.
Because Kate suddenly goes from I don't care to I need to fix what is on the redemptive path.
Anything to do with this device, this weapon, he blames himself for. So it suddenly became from not his problem, and he was trying to wallow in his own misery, to I have not resolved all the issues of my past. I cannot leave this alone and still be a good person.
So we thus head to 4 as your goal.
Mm-hmm. I rolled a 7. So I go up to 53.
Tychus.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest demonstration of what Tychus's personality is like was with K2T2.
Mm.
Your general response to the visions was one more of horror about the visions themselves than what was actually in them, which is interesting. You avoided murder as much as you could. And in fact, you helped out your opponents to an extent.
But, and I don't know if this is going to come up, but I feel in the interest of fairness I need to, I did deliberately try to backshoot the guy who was running away because he'd got my blood up.
You did.
I know you've probably got that on your scorecard, but
yeah,
I can't not highlight that, because that, I think much like when he was going to shoot Garrett Tame in the face and then only at the last minute went, actually I'll put it on stun. When Tychus's blood is up,
yeah,
that recklessness does really kick in, and he gets a bit murdery. It's that is the cross that he's going to have to bear.
You were brave, but you were also quite reckless, and I like the turn of phrase a bit murdery, because murdery is not, you can't be a bit pregnant, you can't be a bit murdery. So as a morality roll, I'm afraid it's a 5 again.
That seems fair. I got a 9, so my morality, it goes up by 4, putting me on 51.
So I have a feeling that at some point in your brain, while you were considering and mulling over in your mind what you were doing there, I have a feeling that you went, Criffit, he was Imperial.
Well, that's certainly what I did.
That doesn't sound very moral, just Criffit.
Well, it was more, this guy is trying to kill me and my friends. He shot me and then poisoned me in the wattle.
Yeah.
You never hit a basilisk in the wattle. I mean, that's a low blow. Well, I suppose it's a high blow, technically speaking, for, general body positioning, but you don't shoot a man in his wattle.
Yeah.
And then he put mines down to try and keep us here and kill us. Quite frankly, I mean, I don't regret it. I'd do it again. And it's not so much that he's an Imperial. It's more the fact that he's drunk.
It was completely that he was an Imperial.
No, if it would have been a member of a swoop gang doing that, I'd have backshot the little drunkard as well.
Mm.
I like the fact that you feel absolutely morally justified, though, by rolling a 9 in lying to your parents.
Aye. Now, the thing about lying to the parents is this. The conflict scale in Star Wars Force and Destiny cannot appropriately reflect the consequences of that particular set of actions. It goes beyond a wee dice roll into...
He was grounded a lot.
I was grounded a lot. Aye.
So between sessions, and whilst we were playing the Coldfire Chronicles, I had a word with the various players as to what they wanted to do between the end of that story and the start of the next story. We're going to have a proper session the next session, but slight ahead spoiler, not really a spoiler, some time will have passed. Part of the reason some time has passed is that ship that you acquired at the end of the story wasn't space-worthy, and I also wanted to have a bit of fun with it whilst basically keep my players excited for the game. So a period of time has passed. So I'm just going to quickly this isn't structured play, this isn't narrative play, this is, I don't know what you would call it, narrative exposition? Something like that. So let's first talk about the J-type 333 Nubian Solar Yacht Type S. The S stands for solar, so they put solar in there twice just in case you've not paid attention.
Is that like pin number and stuff?
It's the model number, because all of the Nubian yachts were made exclusively to order. Someone somewhere is missing their yacht.
Mm-hmm.
They're probably very dead because it was before the Clone Wars.
Or they were in the or they were killed in the crash of the thing on the planet in the first place.
Well, you found it in the cargo hold of a pirate ship.
Yeah.
Quite clearly being used...
On which lots of people had died.
Quite clearly being used as someone's weekend project.
The crash did not stop it from being space-worthy. It wasn't space-worthy when it was on the ship.
Okay.
It wasn't. It was broken and they were fixing it up.
As Mikey put it when we were talking about this earlier, you essentially found a classic Ferrari in a chicken coop. And you moved the chicken carefully off the seat, drove it out, and then realised that not only were all the electrics gone, but also half the vehicle.
Bloody chicken.
So, Tychus has been busy.
Tychus has been up to quite a few things in the time that's gone. I mean, obviously, as alluded to previously, he was grounded very, very hard.
Mm-hmm.
But that was okay, because he spent some of that time working for his parents and working in the shop. And also working on a couple of Life Day gifts, but that's a discussion for a wee bit later on. The two kind of main things that's been going on, I think, in Tychus's life in the time that's passed is Tychus has now turned 18, and as a gift for his 18th birthday, and also to kind of get him out of his parents' hair a wee bit, they've purchased a shop next door, which has been converted into his workshop. And he's not in direct competition with his parents, because that's a terrible plan and it isn't going to work. I mean, they've got like decades of experience and loyal customers. But what Tychus is mostly doing is lower end mod jobs, custom design work. So you'll go to Bard's Bespoke Blasters for your off the peg kind of weaponry, and then with some additional mods added on. What Tychus is doing is handling the special orders. So you'll go to his parents and say, well, I see you've got X sporting blaster, but what I actually want is this, this and this. So that's what Tychus will work on, while his parents tend to handle the more meat and potato side of work. So he's been keeping himself busy. He's been helping rebuild the ship in as much as he can. I mean, that's not really his field of expertise, but he's been doing his best. He's, if you can fix a swoop bike, then you can eventually fix a Nubian space yacht. But he's still kind of working on that. He's got it up and flying, though, with help from the others. And, of course, the last thing is, well, Carween returned from a job. He was also involved in Bracca's little wager, though we didn't really see him throughout the course of Season 1, but he was around. He's had a little bit of extra work. There's been some shady shenanigans going on at Bracca's Palace, but I'm sure that our esteemed GM will come onto that when that's relevant. But Tychus and Carween, they've been on a few dates. They went to the Holovids. They saw Blasto 7, Blasto More, and they're finally dating, which is nice. So Tychus has got quite a few things to live for.
Hooray!
It's worth pointing out that Tychus's parents, as that gift's one of those things where it's like, hi son, as a present to you, have some responsibility. And this might be to do with the fact that you've been hanging out in a luxury space yacht, tinkering with it, with a strange older man and some decidedly odd friends that you've suddenly acquired.
Aye, but let's be honest here. One's a human, one's a Syrian. How can they compare to the wee bristly snout of an Ugnaught?
That's very true. Talking about the wee bristly snout of an Ugnaught, the first time Dr. Smex actually met Carween, he didn't know that he was at all connected with Tychus. You see, Carween is frequently off-planet because he's a gilded bounty hunter. And one of the things that happens on the Outer Rim is, if you're going that way, you might as well take a package. And it sounds weird that with bounty hunters, you actually get, what actually will happen is they'll do courier work. One of the jobs they can take is a courier job. So it doesn't pay very well, but it normally gets you to where you're going, if you see what I mean. So if you're going home, carry these things, because at least the object will be protected. And some of the objects that were delivered by Carween were some letters, he said, looking at his notes, for the Dr. Smex.
Do you want to start with the letter, or do you want me to recap where the doc's gotten up to?
Shall I go through the letters, or do you want to go?
The doc sort of went through I am now going to get on with actually living a life, rather than, just going through the grind of, I am trying to help these people in this hospital as best I can with limited resources. And he got into quite a depressive state to the point where he was drinking, as we found him at the start of the first season. He's now a bit better adept, and he's now trying to look out and help others a bit more. He would like to have tried to start some kind of Alcoholics Anonymous sort of group, except there's no way you're going to start a group like that in a town like Red Yes. But among things, he's trying to improve the hospital, and he's written home for the first time in quite a while, and it's gotten through. So the wives are aware he's still there, hopefully, and he has been anticipating a letter in response for a while.
So the letters you got back, one was from Alderanian Outreach, basically saying that you get to keep your job. Thank you very much for telling us everything that you've told them. And also, keep doing what you're still doing, even if that takes you off-world. Just let us know what's happening.
Okay.
Now, if anyone else is listening is thinking, that sounds a bit like he's a spy, well done, have a biscuit.
Or cookie.
Or cookie, depending on where you are. Your first wife is a senatorial attaché called Katie, and she sends you a very long letter, mostly about nothing. She seems very happy about your work, encourages you to be careful, seems to be very aware as to what you're doing on Cynabale. Your second wife, Sadie, sends you an even longer letter. There's reams and reams and reams of her current research work. She wants a blood sample, if you can send it to her, please. She's been working on spaceborne parasitic infections, or that have been found on the microscopic level. So there's like certain sort of like blood-borne kind of parasites or symbiotes. She's not entirely sure what that happened. She thinks it might cause a sort of space sickness and craziness in certain people. So she's trying to figure out.
Everybody's looking at me like she's a midi-chlorian believer, isn't she?
She's just trying to identify where these weird parasites are coming from and what they're for.
Turns out one of the side effects, it makes your head glow.
It was a coded transmission. I've not said everything. Everything's between the lines, but...
She also sends you information on exotic matter-related injuries from elsewhere in the galaxy, and they seem very similar to what you've seen. Right, wife number 3, Padua, is seemingly touring the galaxy with her dance troupe. She wants to see you soon. She is, as you've figured out, trying to tour the rim. She seems to be going to the other side of where you are as well, so you'll be very far away from each other. Though actually that would make it easier to communicate because hyperspace is weird.
Okay.
Yeah, but they're still writing to each other rather than sending email, you know?
It's just more reliable. So like, if you had very important plans that you wanted to keep secure, you'd put them in a droid and you'd send the droid somewhere. You wouldn't just try and...
Yeah, what lunatic would just send it over the holonet? No, it's got to be via droid courier.
The only reliable way to make sure that your stuff gets there.
Get to a desert and give this to some random hobo. Okie dokie. Are you sure, Mistress Leia? Sorry, carry on.
Tima, who wife number 4, reminds you that you have a family gathering in 18 months' time. You have duties to perform on Homeworld. Not only do you have to perform those duties by law, otherwise you end up with a bounty on your head, by the way.
Bounty on head.
No, 18 months.
18 months.
You also have to select a 5th wife. So those are all your letters that are lovely. A very handsome young Ugnaught. He's very well equipped as well. He's quite clearly not just a postman. It's okay, what have you been up to?
So once the excitements of the last season died down, Kay disappears for a few weeks. What he does is he quits his job. He removes all of his things out of the apartment he's in. So he was living above the doctor, and one day, shortly after the excitement we had, he's moved out. He moves into the new ship and starts focusing on the treasures that we picked up. After about 2 weeks, he returns, and he has shaved his beard. He has finally got himself a haircut. He looks cleaner than he has been in a long time, and he seems to have a focus. Has something that he needs to do. Quite clearly, the visions he had of these terrible things the Empire are going to do, and these terrible things that are going to happen sometime in the future, has shook him to his core. He spends a lot of time with the tube that we had and the holocron, learning from it, focusing his mind, trying to stay away from the drink, trying to be a better person.
So here are a couple of things.
Yes.
Firstly, Tychus's Lagomorph pet,
Yes.
not Harvey, yours, but Hector,
Yes.
keeps turning up while you're training.
Okay.
It's the thinner one.
Mm-hmm.
It's the thinner one that's slightly green. It's
Yes.
like he's like greenish blue rather than, but keeps just watches, is fascinated.
Okay.
Then runs off and does whatever like a moths do.
Yeah.
But it seems fascinated.
I think because, at least for the first few maybe months, or maybe the first month, because Tychus is grounded, he spends a lot of time alone on the ship, which isn't space-worthy and not really at the moment, very house-worthy. So it's really useful that he has somebody to talk to, even if they can't talk back. People looking from the outside might think he goes a little mad, but he spends a lot of time talking to the Legomoths, and making up conversations with them, reacting to what they do. He's not focusing on his training all the way through, but it is something he does rather than taking a drink, rather than giving in to his negative emotions about what happened. He can see there's something he can potentially do about these things. But yes.
Just to explain, because you've practiced with the lightsaber.
Yes.
It is a black hilted lightsaber with gold rings.
Mm-hmm.
It has strange writing in gold on it. Its power stud is a red ruby, or it's ruby red at least. The blade is orange.
Yes.
Which is kind of cool. You have noticed that it has a mode.
Uh-huh.
That when you press and move the ruby,
yes,
the blade takes a darker hue.
Right.
So it becomes darker orange, almost blood orange, if you say blood red. And everywhere gets colder. Like, it just, a chill goes through.
Yes.
And when you pass it through a solid object, there is some resistance. Normally it would just cut straight through.
Yeah.
But this time around there is some resistance. Not sure what that does.
Yeah.
You've not tried that on I'm assuming you've not tried that on a living thing.
No, he very rarely uses the blade. It's all to do with different katas and forms. So that you don't really need to spark up the lightsaber while practicing. So he'll tend to not, especially when he finds that, I imagine by accident, he'll not use that too much. I think possibly because he could associate the cold with more negative aspects of the visions he's already had. So he's a little bit not fearful but cautious of using the lightsaber right now. So he's mostly practicing with the hilt.
When you do turn it on, the standard blade it does the crackly thing. It like power leaps from it. It feels just a little bit unsafe. Almost like the crystal itself is inside it is overcharged. When you very carefully look down the barrel.
When you look directly down the barrel.
I start a new character.
When you look very carefully at because obviously you will have taken it apart as part of
Yes.
the meditation and put it back together.
Yes.
But not disassembled it, just examine the components to make sure that there's...
He's thinking of taking it apart properly because that's part of the instructions he gets. But it's... He's really doing this to center and stabilize himself. He doesn't want to push it too quickly.
So you'll have been instructed to examine it in detail, and the actual kyber crystal inside it, or whatever the focus crystal is, is very, very ornate and carved with tiny writing all over, which again you can't read.
No.
Also, the holocron. I take it you've just stuck to the lessons chapter.
Yeah, he's not very... He can see there's other things, but he's doing this because he feels it will make him useful in the times to come. He needs to have a use, but learning about the Jedi Order or whatever else is on there is not something he feels is useful.
So Rur's style, and I will remind the listeners that Rur looks like Jason Isaacs for your reference.
Mm-hmm.
He's a white-haired Jason Isaacs.
Yeah.
He's very defensive. Very much about preserving life. He believes that life is very precious.
Yes.
He's also very kind of stern, if you see what I mean.
Yes.
Very much the wizard cliche,
teaching
you how to use the blade.
Yes.
You understand that he is no longer a Jedi because he mentions it a couple of times just in the training.
Right.
That he was some part of some Ordo cult.
Okay.
And you get the vibe they were about the preservation of life, but you have not looked into it further.
So the form on the holocron that most appeals to Kay is Ataru, which is form 4. Now, unlike a lot of styles, certainly the lower style, the earlier styles, Ataru is very aggressive. So I imagine on the holocron there's less information about Ataru than anything else. But it is the form that seems to fit him. It's all about attack. Now, the problem with Kay is he doesn't want to attack, but he understands that this is a weapon and weapons are used to attack with. He hasn't really gone into the idea of defense as of yet. He hasn't worked out that you can use this as a defensive thing.
There's enough there for you to develop the style because you're focusing on there, but he tends to frame it as the best way to stop further death is to go all out. You get the feeling that Rur was a bit of an extremist, and was healed with one hand and harmed with the other.
Kay is always of the opinion that if you need to draw a weapon, you've lost. And this is what this is how he gets to this. But if you do draw a weapon, you should know how to use it.
Meanwhile, in the greater world, this is where I feel like I should have a little news jingle, but let's not make things more difficult. So a period of time has passed. Though Tychus hasn't paid the certification, because why would he? You're reasonably confident the ship would be spaceworthy. You've had some friends look over it and go, it'll be fine.
Come round, kick the tyres, test the oil.
They'll make sure that you do have spacesuit just in case.
Shall we describe what the ship looks like before we go on to... Because you've got it to be space-worthy, but it does still look somewhat like a wreck.
Mm-hmm.
It does. So it's got that beautiful silver patina. However, it is covered in blue lightning strikes all the way through. And they're not lightning strikes, they're cracks.
Yes.
Additional cracks have been added.
Yes.
As Tychus has repaired. And you can't... Every time you fix a thing, you can't stop it from doing that blue streaking effect.
Yeah, I imagine that the actual hull underneath the chassis is fine and secure, but this specialist, it's a specialist paint job, really, isn't it? And yeah, I'm not a shipwright, and we're not on Naboo. They have the special kind of
tools.
Yeah, like powder coating thing to get that veneer back up.
You don't really even know what it is. That's like, which is the coat. You know what it is because it's famous, but you don't really know what the process is to do that. You can't melt it down and just reapply it. It doesn't work that way.
So yeah, there's lots of gaffer, space gaffer,
and it ran into something. You don't know if it's part of the material or if it's ran into another exotic material, but obviously it's had some trauma. Quite clearly, someone at some point had very carefully tidied a lot of the various bits and pieces because this was someone's project.
Yeah.
So it looks shattered, but it's still spaceworthy.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I imagine that's just the fascia that's not quite so pretty. The actual hull and sealant is the important thing. The life support sealants, they're working fine. It's just that to get that done, I've had to crack the patina to get to it, and I can't uncrack it.
Yeah.
Unlike the ship that you'll have seen in the Phantom Menace, this is slightly larger, ever so slightly larger. It's a 333, not the one that we see in the movie, which is a 327. So it's slightly wider. It also has...
It's 6 wider.
It is exactly 6 wider.
It's got rigging on the top to deploy solar sails, so it can deploy solar sails. You can walk on the bit where the solar sails are deployed. There's kind of like a gantry, if you sit in to hold it. So you could cheerfully, if you're in a spacesuit or you're immune to a vacuum, just sit there on the top of the ship.
Yeah.
So is that where Roy's little deck chair's been set up?
Yes.
Well, it's interesting because up until you came back, that's where Kay was practicing his lightsaber moves. And then after Roy set his jet chair up, and we know how Roy feels about lightsabers, he moved somewhere else.
But it's got, it's done as a proper little balcony, so it's clearly intended for people to stand on there. But obviously, you wouldn't want to stand on there when you deployed the sails.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, that strikes me as being a poor life choice.
I think I've just worked out how we lose Roy.
And also at the back, there is clearly what appears to be a third middle engine port, which hasn't got an engine in it.
Right.
So it's probably an escape pod or something, but it's not there anymore.
Well, we haven't, as of yet, deployed the sails, so we just have to hope that they work.
Press the button, the sails fly off into space.
It's an escape pod. So, about halfway through, we named the ship, because we didn't know its original name. And because of the winnings that we got from the treasure hunt, and because how we're funding it, we've decided to name the ship the Fire Opal.
Which is a cool name, and it's also convenient that you've got that kind of cool blue sapphire-y style opal effect on the ship.
Mm-hmm.
You've had about 6 months for half a planetary rotation sort of thing between the end of last story and the start of this one. Things have happened on the planet as well. So Red S itself has seen some changes. The events of the crash recovery have uncovered even more of Cynabale's lost treasures. Mm-hmm. Because the Imperials bombed it. Not many people believe that, by the way, but because the Imperials bombed it, it just opened up. So there's a huge chasm now of what was once a city.
Yeah, we saw some of the towers erupt when we were there, but we didn't have the time. Well, they didn't have the luxury of the time to go and start doing any ruin spelunking. So
now there's a shanty town on the outskirts. And there is a trade. Red S is getting more trade because essentially a new resource has opened up. So you've seen some new people turn up, new teams have turned up. As someone correctly identified, Braca has indeed been very brutal. The delicate ecosystem of the various criminal scumbags has been completely disrupted, mostly by these events, and most of the minor players are gone. There was an all-out war between the Pikes, the Hutts, and the Black Sun, and Braca basically had a peace conference at his palace. On Cynabale now, the word Hutt Party is a byword for a bloody violence.
Do you remember when we first went into his palace and there was what we described as a kill zone?
Yes.
I imagine that was used.
I do, and occasionally Tychus has nightmares about said kill zone as the enormity of what's happened sinks in.
But yeah, so he's killed most of the competition. He's also, at the same time, allowed the Imperials to come in. He's essentially outsourced law enforcement to the Imperial garrison. Those nice officers that were completely incompetent, you've seen less of now, and you see less and less of the reluctant officer, and now more younger officers knocking around. So they're still quite gullible because they're not that experienced. Because anyone who knows what they're doing tries to avoid being assigned to this planet. The garrison is larger. It's quite easy to walk out of jail. There was a breakout just last week. And the Empire does pay for artefacts recovered from the city.
Okay.
And there is a seer in Red S now, which is Imperial. Normally they would have been kicked out of town straight away.
Yes.
But now there's someone who's quite clearly, Imperial improved, very proud to announce their alliance to who are technically the law.
Yes.
On this world that's famously lawless. Droids are getting more harassed.
And this is why we don't use email.
But the imps know they're outnumbered. They can't push too hard because they don't quite have the resources.
Yes.
There's more important parts of the galaxy than this ruin of a world.
Mm-hmm.
But stuff is being built. There's starting to be a presence there. And I think that's where we are.
Okay.
Thank you, dear listener, for sitting there very patiently and letting me tell you the story so far. Join us for the next show, and thank you very much to my lovely players. I've been Ed Fortune.
I've been Ross.
I've been occasionally Adam.
And I am equally occasionally Mikey.
And we will see you next time. Force Majeure is played using the Star Wars Force and Destiny game system by Fantasy Flight Games and Lucas Books. Our intro music for this season is Unholy Night by Kevin MacLeod, and our outro music remains Suburban Outlaw by Forget the Whale, both used with gratitude under the Creative Commons license. If you like the show and want to interact with us, we are on Twitter, we are on Facebook, we are on Instagram, all of which are at Force Majeure Pod, though Twitter is probably where you're going to find us more regularly. If you enjoy what we do and want to support the show, there's 3 ways you can do that. The first is via our Patreon at patreon.com/forcemajeurepod. The second is by buying us a coffee at ko-fi.com/forcemajeurepod. And the third way is by rating and reviewing us on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, anywhere where you can find us. We really like reviews. It tells us that we're telling the stories that you want to hear and helps other people find us. Thank you very much for listening. We'll see you next time.